Hey everybody, welcome to the Pet Food Puzzle Guy, and a little bit of different video today. I'm going to kind of shut my mouth through most of this and let you listen to Bryce from BK Pets. Those of you that are familiar with Bryce, BK Pets, he had a channel for years. He goes through it and gives you a history of it, so I don't want to say too much, but it's his story of going from being totally sold on the whole Dr. Becker, Rodney Habib, all those guys, the whole holistic world. And he finally started asking some really good questions, and he has now got a great channel, very entertaining, but very educational. He's looking at science-based, evidence-based science. Just really, it's just been an incredible story, and I've shared it. I'll put the video, my response to his initial video when he put out a 2-hour video explaining where he and his wife were now changing their position. So I'll attach that in the description if you want to watch that. It's pretty amazing, and it's just an incredible story, and I really can't, I'm going to add a few things, few comments, but I really just want you to hear from Bryce because he touches on so many issues of the holistic side or the pet food marketing that's currently going on now, even if we don't want to blame the holistic vets for it, just the pet food marketers, what they're doing. And he was part of it. So you're talking or you're listening from somebody that was in it, and now where he is now. So it's pretty cool. So we're just going to jump in and enjoy, learn a lot from him. Definitely check out his channel. It's BK Pets. It doesn't mean that he and I agree on everything, but his approach is scientific, and he's just doing a great job, I think. So he's one of the channels out there that I recommend. So let's have a listen.
I fed my dogs raw food for 5 years, and not casually either. I shared about my raw food journey online and gained 2.5 million followers from it. I built a brand on these beliefs, and then I quit. And I'm assuming you already think you know the reason why. Salmonella, the recalls, Big Kibble paying me off. And it was some of that, which I'll get into, but the reason why has almost nothing to do with the food itself. In this video, I'm breaking down the real reason I quit raw food. Not the same talking points that everybody else has about balancing and food safety. The actual events I've never talked about that made me walk away from a food that I was convinced was better than anything else. And then there's one part of this that I still haven't made peace with yet. I found raw food the way most people find it, through social media. And for me specifically, it was a YouTube video from Gohan the Husky. And in this video, Gohan's owner prepares this beautiful bowl of raw food. And it honestly, to this day, still looks so good. It looks like what we call real food. So I did what so many other pet parents do, and I asked my personal vet about feeding raw. And she told me straight up that it was dangerous and she does not recommend it. And so I didn't. 2 years later, I'm feeding my dogs Purina Pro Plan, and I come across this podcast with a heart surgeon, a veterinarian, and the guy that ran the biggest pet health account on Facebook. And what they were saying was that I was basically giving my dog fast food every day by feeding them kibble. They said that golden retrievers used to live to 18, and now they live to 8 or 9. They said that dogs are breaking down cellularly at 2 years old. And they said that vets aren't taught any of this. That vets are the last health and wellness professionals to advocate for a ultra-processed diet from birth to death. Think about this for a second. I was doing exactly what my vet told me I should be doing. And this podcast with another veterinarian said that I was slowly killing my dog by doing those things.
What Bryce just said there is exactly why I am driven to continue making my videos, because of what he just said there. And he had, what did he say, 2 million people that were listening to him. Dr. Becker and Rodney and Dr. Judy and all those guys out there, you know, I always say, oh, they're saying all these ridiculous things, and you all say, oh, you know, that she didn't say that, or blah, blah, blah. Now you have Bryce, who was part of that world, and he's saying the same things, okay? And even showing the slides, which I can't seem to get away with doing. But there you go. that's the whole. If you want to know why does Glenn have a channel, what Bryce just said in those last few minutes there, that's why.
And it worked. I finished that podcast. I ran across the street from our shop to our house, and I told my wife, Kenzie, that we were changing everything. And that night, I spent $200 on raw food ingredients, that $200 that I did not have. The next day, I drove 4 hours round trip to pick up those ingredients. That night, I spent 4 hours in the kitchen preparing this meal for my dog, Harper. I took the finished bowl, I set it down in front of her. She took one sniff and walked away. That was devastating. And honestly, this was probably the first red flag in hindsight. Of course, hindsight is 2020. Regardless, we kept at it and we finally got our dogs to start eating it, and they did well on it. They had shiny coats, they had tons of energy, they had nice shiny teeth. And because of those results that we got, we started sharing about this online. At the time, my wife Kenzie and I were the custom resin pet tag business that made pet tags to go on your dog's collar. And within the year, we were now the pet nutrition channel rebranded as BK Pets. A few thousand followers became a few 100,000 followers, became millions of followers. And
look at the power of social media. They ended up with millions of followers, having absolutely no knowledge, no credentials when it came to nutrition, but now all of a sudden they were nutritionists and the experts. Karen Becker did it, Rodney did it, they all did it. No training, no formal credentials, just a good story. And the story is so effective that Bryce he's taken down most of his old videos, but I wish you could see some of them. He was young, had this man bun, and he's just talking trash about hills and all this other stuff. And he bought in 1,000%. But sure enough, here you go. It just built up on what? Was there a nutritionist involved in any of that to get to that point? No, it was just the power of social media and really a bunch of BS.
Somewhere in that journey, I decided to get a canine nutrition certification. So I went through a company called CASI, the Companion Animal Sciences Institute. I paid $750. There were no science prerequisites required. And the course was basically read stuff in a textbook. Granted, it was the vet nutrition textbook that they learn about in vet school, but still, it was like read the textbook, write papers, submit them. They get graded by non-veterinarians. There was no interaction, there were no lectures, there were no videos. 4 months after starting that, I completed it, got my canine nutrition certification, and I felt like I had enough knowledge and information to start teaching people what they should feed their dog.
So there's just a perfect example. If you ever asked me, why, Glenn, do you not trust certified pet nutritionists and certified dog whatever and certified, I really, certificates and that kind of stuff, it's the Wild West. I'm sure there's some good valid ones out there, and there's plenty of ridiculous ones. How do I know? Because when I look at the result of their certification, that they don't know anything, they're just regurgitating pet food marketing, then I know that certification was a joke, just like Bryce's was. But listen to what he's saying. He went through that and he felt he was qualified enough to talk about nutrition with pet parents, and even eventually he'll tell you, even charge them. That was going to be the plan. All because of just good stories, just good storytelling, good philosophy, and absolutely no foundation whatsoever of nutrition science. That's what you have on social media. That's why when most people say, I did my research, I went here, I went there, that's why I cringe, because most of that research is not really research. It's just gobbledygook that just gets repeated and wholeheartedly believed.
And then the brand deals started coming in. Raw Feeding Miami. We feed raw, Viva Raw, Darwin's Raw Pet Food, King Lou Duck Neck, Yummer's Heart Supplement, raw food companies, treat companies, supplement companies, all of them wanting to pay us to basically say the same thing we already believed at the time, which was that ultra-processed foods are slowly killing dogs and fresh whole foods are healing dogs.
And isn't it sad? We have literally a whole industry. The whole pet food industry is built on what Bryce just said. You're killing your dog if you're feeding X, especially kibble, and you need to feed our food, okay? And I find it fascinating. I thought it was only the big three, the big kibble, that was into profit. And here's all these companies willing to pay somebody just because they're saying the right thing. Again, no research here, no science, no credibility. Just, hey, we got these two kids that are really hot and they've got a bunch of followers. Let's pay them to say how processed food is killing your pet and fresh food is just wonderful. So there you go. It's always about profit, folks. It's always about profit.
We're going to get more into the actual breakdown of what brands have paid us what over the years. But one month, a raw food brand paid us $9,638. And then a publisher offered us a book deal. And when I say book deal, I'm not talking about you write a book, you self-publish it on Amazon, you hope some people buy it. I'm talking about a book deal where the books that we wrote were sold in Barnes & Noble stores across the country, and it put us on a nationwide book tour. Honestly, what I realize now that I don't think I even came close to realizing back then was that each one of these opportunities felt like a signal that we were on the right track. I mean, an established pet food brand doesn't pay you a bunch of money to say something that's misinformation. And a publisher doesn't ask you if you want to write a book and then put it in a ton of Barnes and Noble stores if what you're talking about is wrong, right?
Right?
And what's crazy about this is the extreme beliefs, the extreme holistic beliefs did not stop at pet food. We stopped vaccinating our dogs. We stopped giving them flea and tick medication. And I personally drank raw milk every day for 6 months, convinced that it was some sort of magic elixir. My wife and I literally took turns driving from Colorado to Wyoming every week to buy it because it's illegal to sell in Colorado, which didn't register as a red flag in my mind. At the time, it was just like, oh yeah, big pasteurization just doesn't want you to have the good healthy stuff. They want you to remain sick, which is not true. At some point, all of this was not just something I believed anymore. It literally became a part of my identity. And when something becomes a part of your identity that hard, you stop asking whether it's true or not. For 5 years, I asked Kibble one question, which was, where is the evidence? Where is the evidence that says it's safe for dogs to eat the same processed food every single day for their entire life? And where is the evidence that kibble is better than fresh food? And it's not a bad question. It's not bad to ask, where is the evidence? Because that's a big thing that we preach now. But in all of those 5 years, what I realized was I never, not once, turned those questions back on raw food. But then I went back to school, and I want to be honest with you about why. I wanted to go back to school to gain as much knowledge as veterinarians and scientists and all these other people that had more knowledge than me. But I really wanted to expose how corrupt the education system was. I basically wanted to go back to school to become a veterinarian and say, hey, I'm now a veterinarian. I just went through vet school. Here's all the bullshit that kibble companies are doing in vet school. But before I could do any of that, I had to go get prerequisites and learn how science actually works before I could get into vet school. And so we're talking about things like sample size, controlling for variables, how to actually run an experiment. And so I was taking chemistry classes and biology classes and math classes. I also learned that science is mostly about proving yourself wrong. You come up with this question you have, you design an experiment that ideally controls for as many variables as you can outside of the thing that you're testing. And then when you get results, the whole point is to put it out there so other people can scrutinize it and try to find something wrong with it, try to find an experimental flaw. And when you don't have that flaw, that's when you might have something. But then I was sitting there one day and my biology teacher said something to me that made me nauseous the moment I heard it. She said that nothing in science is proven. Now, we have leading theories, right? A theory in science is something that's been well tested and it's a reliable explanation for what's going on. And that's going to be your theory of gravity, your theory of evolution, your theory of general relativity. Those are all very well established. However, they're not proof because in science, you can't prove that something is true in every single instance forever. And so I'm getting a headache just thinking about it. That's when I took a step back in that class and I asked myself, okay, if nothing in science is proven, how are all of these people in the holistic space so sure and confident that they have the right answers? So I went back and I started reading some of the studies that I myself and so many other people in the holistic space were quoting. And what I found was the exact thing I was terrified of finding. Study after study after study, either misrepresented, misquoted, or misinterpreted entirely. Like, for example, the one study that says that dogs eating fresh food live 2.5 years longer than dogs not eating fresh food. Lippert and Sappi are the authors of that study, I'm pretty sure. This was never a study. It was a pet parent survey submitted to win a prize and never peer reviewed. And then you have probably billion-dollar companies, at least $100 million companies like Spot and Tango, using this to try and convince you to buy their food, saying your dog's gonna live 2.5 years longer. And once I started actually checking this stuff, all the other stuff that I had around me that I trusted, it all started crumbling to the ground. I mean, between me and all of the other pet health accounts in the holistic space, we have tens of millions of followers, which means tens of millions of pet parents are making feeding decisions based on the content we put out. And all of us were misquoting or misrepresenting the science.
I just love this kid, this young man. He's young enough to be my kid, I'm sure. Boy, it's just so great because he's saying the same stuff that many people are saying, but he has more credibility because he was in it. He was part of it. He was totally convinced of it. And I love how he shares his way of slowly realizing and then coming out of it. And now he has a really high quality channel that's going to help a lot of pet parents. And that's why I love promoting him.
It's one thing to realize you were wrong. It's a completely different thing to realize that the people you trusted that have more influence over pet parents than every veterinarian in this country combined were also wrong. And no one is admitting it. And to be honest with you, for a while, I wasn't admitting it either. Because there was something else going on around that same time that I was in school that I didn't really know how to deal with. When I decided to go back to school, I started following various doctors and scientists on social media because I figured I might as well start following the people that I'm going to learn from, or the type of people that I'm going to learn from. And I noticed something I did not want to notice at all. Every single one of them was against raw milk. And I was still drinking raw milk at this time. I kept looking for the ones that weren't against raw milk. And when it comes to real, genuine professionals, genuine experts in their field, there really weren't any that were pro raw milk. So I did what I always do, which is I assumed that they were paid off, right? All of these people, if raw milk is this magic elixir and all of these people are against it, there has to be some sort of financial motive for them to be against it. So basically, I ran my own experiment. The hypothesis was that I think these doctors and scientists are paid off to recommend against raw milk. And I went looking for the proof. And the one that really stood out to me was Dr. Mike Vershovsky, who is a family medicine doctor, also a content creator, very anti-raw milk. And I had to ask myself, who would Dr. Mike be sponsored by? Who would Dr. Mike be sponsored by to not only tell his audience, but to tell his own clients that raw milk is dangerous? I mean, big pasteurization isn't really a thing. I mean, I think these milk companies pasteurize their own milk. They're just heating it. It's not like it's some giant lobby. What I quickly realized was that these professionals weren't paid off. They were following the evidence. And the evidence says that raw milk is 845 times more likely to cause a foodborne illness than pasteurized milk, and 45 times more likely to put somebody in the hospital. So I, needless to say, stopped drinking raw milk. And at the time, I didn't tell anybody because I was also giving my dogs raw milk, especially like the raw goat's milk that you always hear about. And I didn't stop that after I heard about doctors being against raw milk. I think I assumed that dogs are different. They're wolves. They have more acidic stomach acid, so they can handle all this stuff that I might not be able to handle. But then on December 23rd, 2024, a podcast drops. Dr. Mike Vershovsky, that we just talked about, and Dr. Steve Gundry, the same exact heart surgeon from that original podcast that convinced me to go from Purina Pro Plan and evidence-based care to completely holistic anti-science care. I went into this expecting to fully agree with Dr. Gundry. I mean, I was still in school to expose the corruption, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna see two people that I'm kind of following on different ends of the spectrum actually talk about this, but like, realistically, I'm not gonna side with Dr. Mike. And what I watched was a heart surgeon get asked very basic questions about nutrition. Not only was he not able to answer them, he changed the subject every single time, which I don't know about you, but in my opinion, that's like the scummy politician things. You know, you see all these hearings from Congress and stuff, and they ask a question and the person does not answer it in any capacity and will not answer it. And that's what I saw in this podcast. I also recognized every move that he was making, because at one point he says humans should not be eating fruit year round because great apes don't eat fruit year round, which is just the appeal to nature fallacy, assuming because something is done in the wild or done in nature, it's automatically better. Spoiler alert, cyanide is natural. Arsenic is natural. I've been running the same exact argument for years, saying that dogs are wolves and should be eating like wolves. Then he uses the blue zones to argue that smoking might be good for longevity. But then when somebody else uses the blue zones to argue that grains and legumes and beans might be good for humans, he says the blue zones aren't trustworthy. So the source is only trustworthy when he's using it for his argument, not when somebody else is using it for their argument. And that's the same exact thing we did. Any study funded by a kibble company was automatically corrupt. Any study funded by a raw food company was just science, and we applauded them for funding research, which is so hypocritical.
I'm loving this. Gotta say, I'm loving this.
So I finally started asking the hard questions about raw food. Questions like, where is the evidence that raw food is better than the same food cooked? And I couldn't find any evidence to support this. What about the fact that my dogs seem to experience better skin and coat health, shinier teeth, tons of energy? And what I've realized over the years is, for example, the shinier skin and coat health is probably almost certainly attributed to an increase in the omega-3 fatty acids in their diet. And the shiny teeth, yeah, raw bones can help scrape some plaque and tartar off of teeth. They can also cause obstruction risks and tear esophagus and tear stomach linings and do all sorts of sketchy things. And our dogs did fine on kibble. So I eventually came to the conclusion that all of the benefits my dogs were seeing, or most of the benefits, had nothing to do with the food being raw itself. And then the next question, if the food is raw and nothing ever gets cooked, what's present to kill the harmful pathogens and bacteria, the salmonella, the listeria, the E. coli? And what I learned was that some companies have kill steps. Some companies use an HPP process, which stands for high pressure pasteurization. And it's basically using pressure instead of heat to kill those harmful pathogens and bacteria. But I also learned that some companies don't do anything, and they basically just hope that the food won't make dogs sick. Also, HPP doesn't seem to be 100% effective. We'll talk about here in a minute, but cats have died from raw food contaminated with bird flu that went through the HPP process. And then another question, how often does raw food get recalled? Not how many total pounds of food is recalled. This is where a lot of people get mixed up, and they say that, oh, kibble has more pounds of food recalled, so kibble is recalled more. Well, no, if raw food companies were as big as kibble companies, the story paints a very different picture, because right now, raw food makes up 10% of the market share, but accounts for 65% of all the recalls. So if raw food brands get as big as kibble companies, they're going to far outscore kibble companies in total pounds of food recalled. But still, even with that, raw food accounts for 65% of the recalls, more than half, but makes up a tenth of the whole market. And then in early 2025, you had a couple cats allegedly die from raw food contaminated with the bird flu. And like I said, that even went through the HPP process. So HPP seems to be proving that it's not 100% reliable. And so at that point, we quit raw food, all of it, homemade raw, commercial raw. And then we said so, and not quietly either. We put out a 2.5-hour podcast where we broke down everything, how we had gotten into it, what got us out of it, what we now believed. And it's still on this channel if you want to watch it. What I feed now is honestly pretty boring. When money is tight or Kenzie and I are really busy, we feed our dogs kibble. And we feed Purina Pro Plan. That's not the only good kibble on the market. You can feed many different brands. There are many different high quality foods. foods. And then when times are a little more chill, we have a little more money in the bank account, we'll cook for our dogs, because I do believe that there are benefits to fresh food. And I want to be clear about something. I'm not sitting here telling you that raw will never be the answer. Do I anticipate it ever being the best food for dogs? Probably not. But if there is research that comes out and real experts are talking about it and getting curious about it, we will look at it. I mean, that's the same thing we said when we were in the super holistic space. We said if there was ever evidence that came out that said kibble is better than raw food, we would listen to it. And there's not evidence that necessarily says kibble results in better health outcomes than raw food, but there is for sure evidence that says there is more risk to your dog's health by feeding them raw food. And that kind of willingness to change with the evidence is the whole point of what we do here at BK Pets. But until that moment happens, my dogs are not eating raw food. Now, I'm about to tell you something that I have no way of proving to you. And after you watch this, if you decide that you don't trust me or believe me, that's totally fine. I have no hard feelings for that. But I spent a weekend going through every single payment we've ever received from a brand since we started all of this over the last 3 years. Deposits, payment trackers, bank statements, literally all of it. Here's the breakdown. These are all of the payments that we have received from what we call anti-kibble brands. Raw food companies, treat companies, supplement companies. That total comes out to about $313,000 in sponsorship revenue. And how much have we made from big kibble companies like Hills, Purina, or Royal Canin? Literally $0. And now we don't even take brand deals from any pet food companies anymore. And if you don't believe me, I have proof on that. One of my all-time favorite companies, a food that I love feeding to my own dogs, reached out to us to do a brand deal. And 6 months ago, I would have said yes in a heartbeat. Again, this is my dream brand to work with. But now we have a commitment to not taking sponsorships from pet food companies anymore so we can remain unbiased. And so we had to tell them, we love you, but we can't take money from you. When people say that Big Kibble got to me or I sold out, I get why that's the easy answer. I get why it's easy to just accept that and not dig any further. But it's completely backwards because the entire time, the money was coming from the other side, flowing very nicely, and I had no reason to walk away from it. But I did, and I would do it again because no amount of money is worth losing the trust of the community that we've built.
I just have this tiny little channel, and I'm shocked it's gotten as big as it has, and I just love it. I love all the different folks that I know that are going to respond to every video, and we talk, and a few of us even talk on the phone and email. It's just been great. I can't imagine the huge community that Bryce and his wife created, and just such. It's so refreshing, again, especially from young people. I mean, I'm making myself sound old, but that's a very old school attitude to say, you know what, I'm going to be truthful at any cost or at a pretty big cost. And, Bryce could have easily just kind of slowly over time gone from, well, there is this other side to look at. There is, the nutrients, and there is some research from Hills or Royal Canin that actually is legit. He could have just kind of muddied the waters and gone into a gray area and kept making pretty serious money. But geez, I will say, the little tiny pet food puzzle guy, I've had about 4 or 5 different brands come to me that wanted to work with me. And all I have to do is look at their nutrient levels, and I say, well, thanks, but no thanks. Because I won't do that. But I don't need the money. It's not something, but for Bryce, he's created a brand, and here he is being so successful. And then he just, because he learns the truth, just says, that's it, I'm done. And won't even accept money from a company that actually does make good food and he does want to promote. That's pretty incredible integrity that you just do not find anymore. You just don't. So kudos to Bryce and his wife, Kinsey. Just pretty cool to see. I'm so glad that I was part of watching it from when he was the what I probably called him a punk, talking trash about Big Kibble, and now to where he is now. So it's very cool to watch.
We also took out a loan for $40,000 to invest into a website called Pet Support. Basically, pet parents could book online consultations with what we call holistic pet health coaches, and they could get information about their pet's health from these experts. Kinsey even took the certification course herself and got to see firsthand exactly how it works. And basically, it's $5,000. When a coach signs up, they are encouraged to get other coaches to sign up, like a boom, 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 boom kind of situation. And a lot of what is being taught is the same misinformation that we had been spreading for years, which is when it hit me. We were about to charge pet parents to book these consultations with people that had no science background. I mean, this certification course has no science prerequisites, much like the one from Kazi I took a while back. So we pulled the plug. And to this day, we still owe over $24,000 on that loan, and we paid $900 every single month. And every single month when I'd see that deposit come through, I'm still grateful that we pulled the plug. But honestly, the money loss wasn't really the hardest part. At the end of 2024, we put out this post that said what was out going into the new year and what was in going into the new year. And what was out, or something we were leaving in the past, was raw milk. This was kind of after my big revelation and following all these doctors and being in school and stuff. And so we said, raw milk is out in 2024. And the reason we put in parentheses, too many experts recommending against it. That was the whole post. Literally did not name a name, did not name any single brand at all. And a company in the pet industry that sells raw milk sent us a letter threatening to sue us for defamation. And honestly, now what I think about is, what level of narcissism is it to hear somebody saying, I'm personally quitting raw milk, and think that that's about you? We never named them. We never named any single person or brand. We literally just said we're quitting raw milk, and they assumed that it was about them. And then they told us what they wanted. And I'm going to read this verbatim so I get it right. They wanted us to take the post down, issue a public apology, and going forward, if we ever wanted to share any information that conflicted with their personal data, we had to reach out to them first. So let me get this straight. A company in the holistic pet space that is extremely critical of big kibble brands having all of this influence over vets and vet schools is trying to control what we say to our audience, asking for approval rights over anything that we say that might conflict with their data. Our lawyer told them that it wasn't defamation and to stuff it, and we never heard from them again. A few months later, the whole bird flu thing happens, and those 2 cats allegedly die from raw food contaminated with the bird flu. So that scared us. I mean, I don't have cats personally, but the fact that our loved ones are dying from kind of not a new disease, but a disease that's becoming a lot more prevalent, especially in raw food, was very concerning. And so we put out a post on an Instagram story that basically said, in light of the bird flu epidemic going on, if it is an epidemic, we are going to stop feeding and recommending raw poultry for the time being. And that was it. We were still feeding raw beef and lamb and all those other stuff. We were just not recommending raw poultry anymore, waiting for the whole bird flu thing to smooth over. And then someone we had been friends with for years that has a raw food company messaged us and told us that we were wrong about the information that we were sharing. And we went back and forth a few times, and it ended with them saying, I'm done. And that was it. A multi-year friendship ended over a disagreement about raw poultry. And that one hurt worse than the brand sending the defamation lawsuit, because you expect these things from brands. I mean, brands get butthurt all the time and send out cease and desist and defamation threats and all these different things. This was a friend. But then there's one more part of this that I still don't think that I have fully made peace with yet. Last year, I was carrying a full course load, running BK Pets and the entire business full time, and I just didn't have the capacity or money to cook my dogs' food anymore. So we switched them over to dry food. And I want to be clear about which dry food, because it matters. When I was still in my holistic beliefs, this food was in alignment with basically everything I believed. It had nothing synthetic. It was air dried, so not ultra processed. And it was expensive, which to me at the time was a signal that the food is better. And even in feeding that food, I still felt an unbelievable amount of guilt. I felt like I was failing my dogs. And then it hit me. where was that feeling coming from? It was coming from the content that I was putting out. It was coming from this idea that it's not enough to just feed your dog dry food. And if I'm feeling that way, understanding all of the nuance that I have in my brain, how many other pet parents are also feeling that way from the content that I'm putting out? I don't feel bad about being wrong about raw food. I think being wrong is inevitable. I think being wrong and learning from it is kind of the whole point of what we do here. What I feel horrible about is the fact that I made real pet parents feel like they were failing their dogs by feeding a bag of food that they could afford. So
This is exactly what the pet food marketing world has become, just what Bryce said. We're going to make you feel terrible that you're feeding that kibble. Listen to all the marketing out there, all the ads, all the descriptions and everything. It's all the same. They're all just using the same playbook, and it's really disgusting. Now, Bryce didn't know better in the beginning. He got swept up in it when he was still young and didn't know enough, but then he asked questions, and look where he is today. Why didn't that work for these veterinarians that are making, I don't even want to guess how much money a few of them are making. I know a few, it's in the millions. But of course, it's big kibble that's out for profit. And based on what? Based on like everything Bryce has been saying, based on pseudoscience. I love that he showed the picture of Rodney and Dr. Becker and said the anti-science folks. He's right. It's not just me saying it. That's just true. That's why most veterinarians don't really like those two folks, because all they do is make poor pet parents anxious and feel guilty and feel terrible. And the worst is when they refuse to use a therapeutic diet from Hills, Royal Canin, or Purina because of what they've heard on social media. That's what really breaks my heart, that those animals are deprived those diets because of these people spewing what they're spewing.
So let me say this as clearly as I can. If you're feeding your dog kibble, your dog is just fine. You are not failing anyone. Fed is best, and I absolutely mean that. When somebody makes you feel like you're failing the animal that you love so much, and the fix is to buy some product that they're selling, that's a red flag. And I know that because I ran the same playbook for years. And I wasn't lying. I believed every single bit of it, which in hindsight is probably what helped make it so effective. I know I'm wrong about something else right now. I just don't know what it is yet. But when I find out, you will hear it from me first.
Can we all accept that right now we're all wrong about something, and that eventually, hopefully, we discover how we're wrong and we correct it, and we have the guts and the fortitude and the integrity to say, hey, you know what? I was wrong about that. I have to say on my channel, I think it's been about 3 years. I lose track of time. I really do. Once you retire, forget it. The days of the weeks, the months, everything just is bleh. But I have learned so much from many of you. I've learned a lot from the interviews I've had with Dr. Bowen and Dr. Gross. I mean, it just, after 34 years, you think, geez, I kind of pretty much know a good amount, and then it's like, wow, there's more and more and more. And so I encourage you, if you're not familiar with Bryce, I'm sure you're hooked on him now just listening to that. I will attach his the video that he did, I Was Wrong, that I did a response to. It's very long, but it's really great. He got into some cool details there that aren't in the other video. But bottom line is, here's another channel that doesn't mean Bryce and I are going to agree on everything, okay? That I'm sure, there's things we're going to disagree on, but we're all looking at it from the right approach. So let's look at the evidence. Let's look at what the board certified nutritionists are saying. Let's look at the research. Let's make sure we're not just cherry picking, one study from wherever that was done poorly. And now I'm going to base my whole idea of how to feed my pet on that one study. That would be very, very dangerous. So it's BK Pets. I'll put the list of all the channels that I love and trust, and you should check them out. But I hope this was helpful, and what a glimpse into the other side that I wasn't familiar with. I fought it for 34 years, but I was never in it. So I thought it was pretty cool. So check out Bryce. Maybe tell him, hey, the pet food guy sent me, and we will catch you on the next video. Make every day special, guys. We're coming into autumn, which is my special time of the year. But get outside with the cooler weather as it's slowly coming. Take your pup for a walk, give your cat a hug, whatever. But appreciate every day, because as you learn, they are indeed precious. So we'll see you.